Welcome to International Securities Exchange's podcast series. Facilitated by renowned educators, ISE podcasts are intended to teach beginning as well as seasoned investors the ins and outs of trading. To find an updated list of podcasts, please visit www.ise.com/podcasts. Please be sure to listen to our important message following this episode regarding the risks of investing in exchange-traded options.
And then obviously by definition at big trends, I like to trade those trending type securities to maximize my profit potential. The whole goal of doing all these three things is to give myself an edge in the market. So I'm really thought through my entire strategy before I even enter a trade. And that's an easy way to get an edge over your competition. In terms of trading the currency options, I make sure that all my trades fit this criteria. So I ask myself, I have a little check sheet on my desk on my trading station before I enter into any particular trade, and I ask myself, is the option I'm getting ready to buy, does it have at least 2/3 intrinsic value? If so, I'm good there. Am I buying enough time? Typically, the minimum is 2 months. The maximum is about 6 months that I like to buy, somewhere in that range. You can kind of get a feel by looking at the charts, in daily charts, some sort of an idea of how long that move might typically take, and you can look at longer-term moving averages or draw some key support and resistance levels and trend lines to get some sort of an idea of where you expect that particular currency pair to move. And then I just make sure that my indicators are telling me that it is, in fact, a trend that I'm trading and that I'm jumping on board. So some of you who might be new here today might ask, why trade currency options? And my definition is, it is really one of the easiest and most efficient ways to find trends and trade those trends. Currencies inherently have advantages to them that are completely different from all the other markets out there. As a lot of people know, currencies can be used as a hedge against inflation, or the way I like to use them more often is just a simple pure play on the markets, because that's the easiest way to find some of those trends there. As I mentioned earlier, you don't need a Forex account to trade currencies anymore through the invent of currency options. So that makes it simple. You don't need to have multiple accounts at multiple different brokers and try to deal with multiple different software platforms and multiple different statements. Just get it all consolidated in one place and trade your stock and ETF options and your index options at the same place you trade your currency options. Don't make the game more complicated than it already is for yourself. Currencies do tend to have a lower correlation to the stock market, the overall broader stock market, so it does allow you to diversify. But then really my favorite part is the long trending stages that you see taking place in the currency market. And that's really one of the best reasons why a trend trader should really take time and strongly considering towards trading currency options. One of the final points I want to make before we take a look at some of our indicators and strategies and ultimately some of our charts that we have laid out for us here today. I'll go ahead and ask the question, and if you have any comments on it, you can go ahead and type it in the chat box on the right. But how many people feel like they've fallen victim to information overload at any point in time in their trading career? You can't open up a magazine, open up a newspaper, open up your email inbox, turn on the TV. You can't do any of that without being bombarded from information. And it's hard to disseminate which information is good, which information is bad, which information you might want to consider acting on, which information you might not. So, that can just really be a drain, in my opinion, emotionally, psychologically, physically, and then ultimately, if you're drained in those ways, then you're probably going to be drained financially as well, and it just becomes a really frustrating process. Trading currencies takes a lot of that away from you, folks, especially if you just narrow it down to the major currencies around the world. There's only 8 of them, and then if you really stop and think about it, the way they're all denominated and traded, the US dollar is involved in every pair that you're most likely going to trade. So there's really only 7 pairs then that you would even consider looking at if you really want to stay hyper-focused. So that helps you to avoid some of the information overload. If you go out and you try to trade just stock options or ETF options, you have to look through some 3,300 optionable securities on a daily basis to try to determine if you're getting any particular signals or not based upon your indicators as a technical trader. That's a lot. You have to have, investments in software packages and things like that to be able to scan through that, because simply a human can't do that and still have a life outside of trading. However, when you trade currencies, you can do that. There's really only 7 different charts that you have to look at. So it really narrows things down. And then from there, what I know Steve and I have talked about and Stephen Price has talked about, and I think you'll experience it as well if you haven't already, is just like when you trade stock options, how sometimes you'll find your favorite stocks, or you'll find a sector or even a few individual stocks that you really feel like you understand how those stocks move. You understand what moves them up and down, and you really understand how to read those particular charts, what a breakout really looks like as opposed to a fake out. Well, the same thing happens in the currency options world. And it's a lot easier because you don't have that information overload. You're more focused. So you can become really familiar with even just a couple of these pairs, maybe 2 or 3, and really hone in on those and only find the best signals that take place there. And if you can do that, just imagine how much that frees you up for other opportunities. Your capital is only going to be tied down in the best of the best trades because you know exactly what you're looking for. And it's not necessarily easy from there, but it's a heck of a lot easier from there because you're eliminating some of the distractions, some of the information overload, and some of the stresses that inherently trading. So the more that you can limit those, the sharper your edge is going to be on your competition. Okay, so let's jump into one of our particular indicators here and then take a look at some charts. Now, to give you some background on this particular indicator, our time is very precious to us, and even more so, these days. We have so many different demands on our time, and so everything in the theme in 2009 and really going forward, and the marketing buzzword that you hear from a lot of people is smart. How can I be smarter? What are smarter ways to do things in my overall daily life, in my daily commute? And then ultimately, we take that a step further. How can you be smarter in your trading? Obviously, the word smart just simply means intelligent. So how can you be more intelligent? Another way that we put it in 2009 is just simply being more efficient. So how can you be more efficient with what you do? Take away the inefficiencies, which can often be the time drains and the energy drains, and ultimately the financial drains on you. So how can you get rid of all those inefficiencies, or at least limit them as much as possible if you can't ultimately completely eliminate them, and really focus on the areas where you're most efficient? Well, you have to have clear understanding, thought, and judgment. So essentially, you have to be able to clear your mind, and you have to, get rid of, as I mentioned, all those inefficiencies. And we see that all the time with new products that are rolling out. We have the pictures here of the smart cars. I don't know if you all like the smart car. I personally don't. I don't think it's as attractive as some of the other cars out there on the market. Plus, I'm a tall guy, as is Price. We're both about 6'4", 6'5", so I don't think I could fit in that very well. It looks like about the size of a golf cart to me, and it makes me think that I'd rather be out on the golf course than riding around in that thing. However, it is a very efficient way to get around, to get from point A to point B. So, you always have to keep that in mind.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. To find more podcasts on options, stocks, alternative markets, and market data, please visit www.ise.com/podcasts.